Hey, everybody.
Hello, how's it going?
Good.
I missed y'all.
Yeah, well, welcome everybody to the So You're About to Graduate College show. Yeah, I know people are probably still rolling in, but first off, we have some big news. Kelly Bailey has some news to announce.
Yeah.
I have news to announce. Oh,
Yeah.
Okay. So we have an amazing new addition to our show. A person by the name of Kyle Branch.
Hello, Kyle.
Hi, Kyle.
Hi, hello.
Kyle Branch is going to be our new producer. And although we're not losing Rachel, she is being so amazing, and we love her, but we need extra people because this show is huge and wonderful. So
yeah, you may recognize Kyle. He was a guest on one of our previous shows when he was highlighting one of his projects. But Kyle, you want to give a quick 20-second intro?
Yes, absolutely. Hi, everyone. I'm Kyle. I'm a graphic designer currently based in Los Angeles. I'm really a lifelong fan of themed entertainment. I grew up in San Diego, going to SeaWorld, Legoland, the San Diego Zoo, and of course, Disneyland. So I had all of those great outings with family and friends growing up. And also at home, I was addicted to playing Roller Coaster Tycoon and Virtual Magic Kingdom. So it's really no wonder that as soon as I found out that I could have a career designing these experiences, I decided to pursue that. I graduated from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo last year, June of 2019. And while I was there, I was really involved in CAPED, the Cal Poly Amusement Park Engineers and Designers Club. And that's where I really started to find my people. I also participated in the Disney College program. I got to intern with Universal Creative, working on the Universal Beijing theme park. And while I was an intern at Universal, I formed a team with other interns to enter the Disney Imaginations competition. And we ended up getting second place in that, which led to an awesome internship with Walt Disney Imagineering right after graduation. And that's where I was at until COVID hit. So since then, I've been trying to stay involved in the industry through a variety of ways. I've been working on some cool collaborative projects, taking classes, and one of those was working on a project with Patrick as our mentor. And so I was on this show back in September talking about that project, and now I'm here as a producer working behind the scenes. So I'm really excited to be here and be a part of this. Hey, Megan. If anyone wants to connect or chat on LinkedIn, I'm always happy to do that. So happy to be here. Thank you, and can't wait to hear what Charlie has in store for us today.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
welcome.
was amazing.
We're so happy to have Kyle. And now we have 3 graphic designers on the team as well. So get ready for all the amazing.
I'm feeling very out of place.
You can coordinate.
My lack of graphic design abilities. So yes, Kyle, welcome. And I know as you're joining our team as a producer, but you're also actively looking for work. So if anybody needs a great creative graphic designer,
please. Thank you. Thanks for that, Dave.
Yeah, I know. I hate having to ask myself. So I always figured I'd ask for you. So welcome. Yes.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah. And I know we don't want to take up too much time, so I'd love to just dive right into it and bring in Charlie and learn a lot about what he does in Falcon's Creative. So Charlie, hello.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Great.
Awesome. Glad to be here.
How are you doing today?
I'm great, It's nice to have a bit of a calm in the storm and be able to chat with you guys.
Yeah, I know there were quite a few projects that you guys had worked on that won some awards yesterday, right? Yeah,
we were really excited about that. We actually, for the Jane Goodall experience with Nat Geo, we won an award for that, which has been just super exciting. We got to work with her firsthand, and that was unreal. I saw her when I was at Rollins, but to actually get to work with her one-on-one was that was totally different. Really exciting.
That's awesome.
That's super cool. Yeah. Very nice.
I'm so excited to hear about that. Like, legitimately, like, peak excitement.
It's a really cool exhibit. We've actually been able to work with Nat Geo a good bit as one of their key design teams, and they're just a wonderful client. But to be able to take the story of Jane Goodall and just walk through from her first experiences with chimpanzees all the way to her current research and involvement in conservation, there's nothing else like it. It's that borderline of edutainment, where it's education, entertainment, and taking that in a really fun direction. And Nat Geo's an amazing client.
That's amazing.
So, before we get started too much into your work and what you guys are doing, we'd love to hear kind of your background. I think, Emily, you're going to take some of those questions, right?
Totally. All right, let's go through the whole storyline.
Origin story of Charlie.
I know. There once was a boy. No. So I started in theater with being involved in not only acting, but also stage design. I went to Rollins College here in Orlando, where I studied theater, Mandarin Chinese, and sculpture. Jumble of stuff, but all things I was interested in. I entered in as an art major, but ended up being pulled into theater with the idea of set design. Because really what set design is, it's sculpting three-dimensional environments for actors, which ends up being very close to what I do today, is sculpting environments for guests. So it really does tie together in a fun way. When I was at Rollins, I studied abroad 3 times. I was very hell-bent on getting as much experience as I could. Studied abroad in China, Edinburgh, Scotland, as well as, oh goodness, I am forgetting the last one because it was so long ago. Prague in the Czech Republic for a month-long theater conference. Upon graduation from Rollins, I went into working at Disney Hollywood Studios' Scenic shop, where I was doing fine fabrication, scenic painting, sculpture on rides, attractions, resorts. The cool thing about that was I was able to work on new opening attractions, like some of the conception work for Pandora. I worked on Test Track and doing quite a bit of the blacklight painting with that. New installations in Animal Kingdom, which really was a wonderful experience and kind of cemented my interest more in entertainment than theater. I'd say about after a year and a half of that, I ended up transferring to be the head scenic artist of Magic Kingdom Parades, and I was there for about 3 weeks before I realized this was absolutely not what I wanted to do. It was amazing, but working with over 2,000 pounds of glitter each day becomes a bit much. So from there, I ended up looking for different grad school experiences, because I realized more that instead of building people's designs, I wanted to be the one designing. So I looked into a bunch of master's programs, sent out a bunch of emails, packed up my car with my dog and a few bags, and just went and visited all these grad schools. I ended up at University of California, San Diego for their scenic design program, which is one of the top 3 in the nation. It's a very just great program because it has a tie to the La Jolla Playhouse. So one of the biggest things that you do there is you focus on communication of your design and the actual design itself. You're not building it. So while it's production focused, you have to work as a professional designer from day one, which is just an amazing experience. It was a lot of work, and grad school was a beast, but I wouldn't have it any other way. While I was in grad school, I was also doing some work up in LA freelancing. And then once I did graduate, my partner and I had a bet to see who would get a full-time first. He won, so we moved to Orlando, and I think a week later I started here at Falcons. A position lined up, and it was just meant to be. So at Falcons, I started as a project coordinator with establishing creative designs, doing some design work with projects as well, but mainly keeping project flow. Moved into a associate project management position, and then currently taking on a full-time design role here as our production designer.
Whew.
That's amazing. Thank you, Charlie, for sharing that. I know it's fun kind of to relive that journey. So thanks for doing that.
It's a lot of flashbacks.
So you have this amazing breadth of work and experience under you, and you also majored in Chinese and Mandarin in your undergrad.
Yeah, I did.
So cool. Do you want to talk a little bit about like how that came to be, like why you chose to also add that within your learning and different things like that?
Yeah, totally. I'm stubborn. I think that's the easiest way to talk about it. I love linguistics, and I've always been very interested in other languages. When I was 7, I started learning French because I wanted to, and I just started reading the French dictionary and kept going from there. So going into Chinese was just always an interest. I grew up in LA near Chinatown, and I think I had always just been so curious about the culture and language. And I knew a bit about the culture and lores of China, but being able to dive into the language was just really exciting. The Chinese program at Rollins is fantastic. We were tied in with being able to meet with the workers who are at Epcot. So I'd say every semester we would go and have a giant dinner with them and just be able to chat and have these one-on-one experiences that really founded that. But Chinese, I think, was always an interest in, just because it's so foreign in a lot of ways to English and Western culture, that I was just very drawn to being able to understand that more. And linguistics, I think it's a really interesting approach into how we can especially work with design, because designing, you're not always designing for your own audience. You're designing for any audience. It has to be a global idea that can communicate to everyone. So much of my focus in linguistics is understanding how ideas can relate to different people. So you'd have different languages. The idea or the word "I" is more rarely used. Some people, the idea of "we" or a group is more widely used. So being able to understand not only that how they form their thought, but culturally they're going to think in that sense becomes really important. And even to the point that there's a lot of words and cultures that don't translate. Emotions and different feelings, they don't really have an exact translation, but within that language, and being able to understand what that is just fascinating and super exciting.
Yeah, that's super cool. And you make such a good point that, like language is communication. And in this industry specifically, we work so much, with so many different cultures. It's such a vast industry in itself. So yeah, I love that. I think that's such an invaluable skill that you have.
It's
so
fun.
Cool.
It's
so cool.
really different. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Great. Well, you also talked a little bit on your journey so you started at Rollins, did a bit of work there, and then went on to get your master's at UCSD. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that because I just came off my master's. Kelly is finishing her master's, and then Dave is the only one in this little group that doesn't have a master's.
Rub it in.
They have a full-time job as well. So I kind of wanted to talk about that master's experience with you. You kind of alluded to this, but how you decided to pursue higher ed when you wanted to kind of have that shift in your career rather than kind of going full force. I don't know, what motivated you to kind of go back into academia?
Yeah, I think a lot of it was understanding that I wanted to shift more towards design. I graduated with a design degree, but I got straight into production, and having that as a base was, I think, absolutely ideal, because now in my job, I can understand what a material is going to be when we're building it. So my approach to design is very holistic. So really keeping in the idea that having an end goal to our production. But I chose to go with a theater production design or theater design degree because really scene design seemed the closest thing. I mean, when I was just looking, the SCAD program was, I think, its first year of our theme entertainment design program. But I knew that the program at UC San Diego was just a phenomenal program with a lot of opportunity to have actual build experience. And for me, I know I wanted to work on communication. I know for me, it was a lot of introspection of understanding what I needed to work on personally and finding a program that fit that. I think the decision to go back to school was really just one of those where it was a personal choice that for me, I knew there were things I needed to work on, and the most direct way to work on it and just spend the time hammering out the details was to go back to study.
Yeah, I definitely relate with that as well. And that was a big reason why I chose to go back to school as well. One, because I was having a hard time finding a job, but also I knew that, that master's program itself would give me those resources to commit that time to the things that I wanted to learn and also produce out of like the resources that they had. So yeah,
totally.
I definitely relate to that.
Yeah, and I think coming out of it, you definitely have this understanding that like working under pressure. Once you do grad school, nothing's crazy. Everything you're like, great, I can do this, of course. You're a lot more relaxed. There's less panicking.
I totally feel that. I think Kelly also totally feels that.
Yeah, right.
Awesome. Okay, so now coming to where you are now with Falcon's creative group, you have an awesome role there. I know you put together a little package for us as well, if you wanted to share that.
Totally, yeah. I think just flipping through and giving our audience a better understanding of what Falcons does. We can skip to the next slide, Rachel. So Falcon's creative group is the larger company. We're a full design service company. We focus on everything from design all the way to install, which is a really cool opportunity because a lot of people focus on either blue sky or actual production, but to be able to have insight into the whole process is something that's really exciting. So Falcon's creative group being the entire company, we have 3 divisions of our company. We have Falcon's Treehouse, which is the creative division, which I'm part of, which is our master planners, our designers, our concept artists, our graphic designers, everyone who's involved in the initial ideation of a project and who would end up following that through with creative guardianship through the end of install. Within that, we have a full media division, which has been really exciting because we've been able to do full-on animated features for attractions and work all over the world, creating a lot of amazing attractions. And finally, we have our Falcon's licensing division, which in-houses our own library of media that we've produced. But also within that, we have multiple products and attraction designs for ride systems that we've built ourselves that we already have existing and are able to push forward with when a client comes to us. So it's kind of that full service design studio in that sense. Go to the next one, Rachel. Oh, yeah. So just some of the stuff that we do in each of our divisions, but that's kind of what we just talked about. We can go on. I think just we always start off with this in anything we talk about with Falcons. We're so focused on culture and creating a work environment for everyone who's here. You can see in some of the photos, we're a really close team. We have an open floor workspace that when we're normally operating, we're able to have this just very one-on-one interaction. And we do maintain that of making sure that we're all communicating and that there's a lot of just collaboration happening together. Go to the next slide. So we were started in 2000 by our founder, Cecil Magpuri. But as you can see, this highlights a lot of the work that we've done over the years up until currently. We've done major attractions all over the world, doing IMG Worlds of Adventure in Dubai, starting off with Dark Castle. We even did one of the first exit areas to the, Spaceship Earth post-show. And then currently working on the Kathmandu Resort in Punta Cana. We're working all over the world, and I think that's one of the best things about Falcons is we do have a global breadth of work, but also we're doing some hard-hitting, really fun projects. Go to the next slide. We've been incredibly lucky to win a number of awards. We have an outstanding team here, and we've won awards not only for our visual studio of the media side division that we have, but also Attraction Brass Ring Awards, and even recently our TEA award for Jane Goodall, which is not on the list yet, but that only happened a few hours ago, so we'll get it up there. Can keep going. So Falcon's Treehouse, kind of diving in a little bit more into that division. So a lot of the stuff that we do really is master planning, attraction design, and so forth, going into the different aspects of these locations, being LBE, zoos, aquarium, full theme park, museum, or even just an executive production of taking something and producing it further, which it's always exciting, but to be able to work in these multiple varieties within the studio is great because no project is the same, and it keeps things very up to speed. Keep going. So one of our major projects that we finished was Atlantis Sanya in China. I know a lot of people are familiar with the Atlantis Resort in the Bahamas, but this is actually on Sanya Island in China, and it's expanding that IP into a full-on resort. Well, it still has to live within that world of what Atlantis is in their own IP. We were able to take that and grow it, not only in building for the resort itself, but also for a full water park. Keep going. Just to show some imagery of the actual park itself. So it was really amazing to be able to work on these structures and create a very unique, one-of-a-kind environment that's specific to the IP, but then also specific to the location. Keep going. It was just a wild experience, and I'd say amazingly rewarding because our team was able to guide this through the studio from the ideas of first initial blue sky all the way into directing our install on site. It was just a really rewarding creative process, and to be able to work with live marine animals as well and creating environments and tanks, that's a very unique experience, especially when you're overlaying an IP. Keep going, Rachel. Another thing that we were able to recently do was with National Geographic in Times Square, or just off of Times Square in New York, was the Ocean Odyssey, which was a walkthrough experience of edutainment where we're able to take guests through different environments of the ocean. You can go to the next slide. So a lot of this was exciting because not only were we able to take the environmental creation and the spatial development, but we were also to work a lot on these interactives and how we were able to take guests and have them be more one-on-one directly related to the subject matter. In creating these interactive stations as well as different installations throughout the space. We can go to the next slide. One of our largest projects was the full design of IMG Worlds of Adventure. This was really exciting because we got to work with very strong IPs such as Marvel and Cartoon Network to develop one of the largest indoor theme parks in the world. You can go to the next slide. This actually featured one of our own attraction designs, which was amazing to be able to bring that to life. But to be able to work with these different IPs to create World of Gumball, Adventure Time, Powerpuff Girls, and all sorts of other IPs that all live within one world is just unreal experience. And I'd say we were very lucky to do it, and to be able to collaborate with such clients was super exciting. Keep going. And just hitting some of the big stuff we've done. If you're familiar with the Hunger Games literature as well as the movies, we actually got to design the Lionsgate zone for Hunger Games, which was just super exciting to be able to create a land based off of not only this IP, but also that incorporated a lot of really interesting one-of-a-kind ride attractions. In Vietnam, one of our largest projects as well was creating a full-on French village. It was wild because it's a full-on resort in the mountains of Vietnam. But beyond that, it also had a few attractions built into it that we were able to master plan fully. Lastly, we have a partnership with Kathmandu, which has been an amazingly exciting partnership that we are currently working on in the studio, and something I'm directly involved with. They're an amazing client, and to be able to take their IP, expound upon it, and create this one-of-a-kind universe, and I really do mean one-of-a-kind, and multi-universe and fun. It's just so exciting. Yeah, keep going. So our Falcon's digital media team is also a large division of our team that is able to create and install all these digital productions, whether it be an attraction, a animation, or its own existing media reel. We're able to do that all in-house. Keep going. Hey, Suki. So some of the stuff we do in our team is media production. We do a lot of interactives, and I think that's always something we focus on, is how's our guests going to interact with this? VR, AR, projection mapping, visualizations. We have our own sound production, and we have a sound booth at our studio, which has been really exciting to do a lot of voiceover and pre-production experience, as well as a full development team where we're able to develop our own software in-house. So really the exciting part about this is we're able to do so much as a team that we're able to create a full-on experience. We can keep going. So recently we just won an award for the Jane Goodall experience, which I know we talked about in the beginning, so I won't talk to that too much, but just an amazing experience. And as you can see in this photo, one thing we really focused on was the immersion of it. You walk into this space and you're fully in this rainforest with Jane Goodall. We can go on to more photos, but just a really interesting way to take projection mapping and make it more immersive and world building. Keep going to the next slide. Another experience that we recently worked on was the Halo Outpost experience. We actually got to work with 343 Industries to create and expound upon the universe of Halo, which I know a lot of people in studio are big into gaming, and that was just a super thrilling project. Keep going. And then Falcon's licensing. We do, beyond a lot of the stuff we do in studio, we keep working on developing new ride systems. I think a big thing about us is we're not stagnant. Anything we're learning about, we want to take in and continue to develop to stay cutting edge, but also to be able to offer new products to vendors worldwide. And keep going. So, like I said, we have our attraction systems, which we do, technology as well, and our full-on media library for licensing. And keep going. So some of the big products that we work on or have worked on, and this is not limited, but our 4D dark ride experience, our suspended theater, as well as interactives. These are things we've worked on throughout different installations and different projects. And even recently, we just did our game suite, which you can see on our LinkedIn page, which is a really exciting environment that creates a full-on private gaming experience that's 3D projection mapped. It's really wild. It's actually something, once we're able to open it up further to guests, we have it right downstairs in our studio. And we can keep going. I think that might be it. Yes. So that's a little bit about Falcons and what we do here. But we have fun, and we have an amazing team. I'm really proud to be part of it.
That is so cool. Thank you so much for sharing a snippet of what you all have done over the years.
The projects you guys worked on is so cool, and bravo, hats off to your graphics department for everything you guys put out, whether it's press release or slide deck like this, or it's always immaculate. It's always like so cool. The lighting is always so dramatic.
Thank you. We worked really hard at that. Our graphics department is amazing. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, and I saw. I want to shout out one of the exhibits I got to visit this last year that you guys worked on. You had a little graphic in there, but you didn't talk about it. The Heroes and Legends exhibit at the Kennedy Space Center is so cool. Especially if any of you guys are in the Florida area, if you get a chance, go check it out, because it for being like a Hall of Fame type of attraction, which I've been to a few of them, like the baseball, and it's very, very well done, and it does a very good job of telling a story, and it's very inspirational. So definitely check that out.
That's so good to hear. Those are all the things we really wanted to accomplish with that project, and yet again, an amazing client to work for.
Yeah, definitely cool. Now that we kind of know a little bit about you and a little bit about the company that you're currently working for, anybody who's listening, if you have any questions at all about any of these projects, I'm sure there are some things you can't answer, but please just message us in the comments, and we'll get to as many as we can. I would like to start off and get a little bit into your more recent into your journey. You're at that nice sweet spot where you're started and you've had enough experience to where you can really talk about your journey into the theme entertainment industry. I know we have a lot of people who are just graduating or a couple of years out and are having a hard time getting in, especially now. But I'd love to kind of hear your take on what you what you've experienced trying to get a foot in the industry, and then also like what you recommend for people who are trying to get their foot in the industry now.
Absolutely. It's hard. I think that's the easiest way to start out with. There's no easy way to get in. It's so much of it is beyond being good at what you do. It's about finding the right timing and the right opportunity. It has to work out perfectly. It's kind of the perfect storm typically. But I can say one of the biggest things that I find in people that I know, like seeing that they end up working in the industry, is the passion. Everyone who's in this industry lives and breathes it. They want to be here, and they couldn't imagine working anywhere else. People always joke and ask those questions of like, well, okay, well, if you weren't working here or weren't doing this, what would you do? And it's like, I always have that moment of like, I don't know what I'd be doing because this is what I want to do. I would find a way to do this. And I think that's one of the big telltales of getting a foot in the industry is this is what you have to want to do. And it's a struggle, but it's absolutely worth it. One of the best things I can say for getting a foot in is get involved in any way you can. Go to TA events, message people, and just start discussing things. It's a huge part of just being able to be available, but also making sure people know who you are and know what you do. I know I was incredibly stubborn and persistent about kind of finding my way into the industry. I was in San Diego, but I was going up to LA for every TA event I could find. And yeah, it's an hour and a half drive, but you got to make the effort and you got to really want it. And that's so much of just being involved and trying to take part in stuff. It's difficult, but it's worth it. Beyond that, I think definitely when you're trying to break into the industry, I think a lot of people say it, but it's good to understand where you fit in and what you do. If you're coming into this saying, I just want to be in the industry, that doesn't tell any employer how they could work with you or what you want to do. I think coming in with the understanding of how you can add to a team is essential, and being able to understand not only what your interest is, but your skill set and how that would comply to a larger set of a product or a production. I think that's some of the biggest things I can point out.
Yeah, I think like you said, as I've been talking to people, I've really noticed that it has been a lot of that right place, right time. I was at this event, talked to this person, they needed somebody with my skills, but the action step that you can take to get to make that happen, you can put yourself in more places.
Absolutely.
You put yourself in more places, and you talk to the people, and you say what you're good at, what you are interested in. The more people who know what you want,
totally,
the more chance you're gonna make that connection.
Absolutely. And just bouncing off of that, I think it's also one of those things of, it's a small industry. A lot of people know each other, and it's one of those things of, you've got to make sure that you're being nice to everyone. I know it sounds kind of counter, like just basic or counter, like you don't need to mention that, but it matters how you treat people, because these are the people you're going to be working with 40 hours a day, typically more, 40 hours a week. Oof, that's a long day. But these are the people you're really collaborating with and being able to work with. They want to make sure that you're bringing that energy to the table. And also, they may not be able to use you, but they know of someone else who can, and go, great, I have this person, let me recommend them. And that's typically, if you can get someone who can recommend you, that's an amazing way to not bounce over the hiring process, but definitely get a foot ahead.
Yeah, and like you said, I like the point you made about trying to be nice to everyone and connect with everyone. I think so many times people come in and they try to just find and connect with the discipline that they think matters.
Yeah.
But it's such a cross-discipline kind of work. You will be working with all of these people, and they all work with the same kind of people that you're interested in, and so don't be discriminate. I mean, get to know. And plus, everybody I've met in the industry is like super fun and cool anyway. No matter what they do for a living.
Totally.
Yeah, it's been made some good friends that way as well. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So maybe there. I know you can't speak specifically to the hiring processes of Falcons. But if there are any tips that you have for people who are applying or reaching out specifically to companies, maybe some do's and don'ts that you've seen, I'd love to hear them.
Totally. I think, like I said, I can elaborate more on that, but know how you can fit into a team. I think that's one of the biggest things. What do you bring to the table? The easier someone can understand how they're able to immediately collaborate with you and bring you into what they're working on, that's just so much easier for the hiring process. Coming in and being just, I want to be here, I want to work with you guys. That's great, and I love the passion, but I want to understand how that passion drives into what you're doing and how you're collaborating with everyone else. I also think, just especially with the interview process, and this is something my dad actually really hammered home, if you don't know the answer, or you want to have a little bit of brief time to think about it, say, that's a really good question, and then come up with your answer. Take a breath, take a moment. You don't just need to hammer out an answer, because coming with something that's very prepared, that's great, but also we want to know who you are. If you already have an interview with that company, they typically know that you have the skill set, or they're at least allowing you to come in and share that skill set. So you're already a step ahead. So at that point, we really want to know who you are as a person. And I think that's something that at Falcons we value so much, our culture within our team, and want to maintain that. So getting in the door is the first part, but we want to make sure you fit in with the team. And I think just that's always something to consider with any place that you're working at, is who you're working with and those personalities, but also really your family in a lot of ways.
That's such a good point. Really, it's hard when you're first getting into a new industry or to a new job to kind of figure out where you are. But to hear someone who has been on that path to get there say those things, I think it's kind of drives home the message. Like, it's important to collaborate. It's important to get along with people.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's something that, like, yet again, like, I learned this. You have to kind of see it in for yourself. You're like, oh no, I can one-man army this. Like, I can get this done. Yes, you can, but you're typically better off when you have a team. You may be really great at one thing and good at a lot of things, but there's also people who are really great at those things you're really good at. And learning that you don't have to stronghold every part of the project, it's a really tough lesson, but it's definitely one that I think really good to hear. Yeah.
That's speaking of collaboration, like, I'm trying to figure out the best way of putting this.
Yeah.
When a company like Falcons is collaborating with a company that wants to hire them, I know you can't really get into a lot of the process, but like, there's collaboration on that level as well. It's not just working for, a team. It's now taking these things in.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on any of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think especially when you're working with a clientele, you have to understand what they're bringing to the table. They typically have something in mind that they want, and that's why they're coming to you as a person or you as a company. They understand that there's an end goal and you're part of that, or a puzzle piece in that process. So I think it's really just really important to understand that you're honoring their vision as well as what you guys want to create. You're not always going to create exactly what you have in mind, because sometimes the client may have a very distinct vision, or they may just have a very general vision of what they want. But you're building a product, and at the end of the day, you need to understand who you're building it for and the skill sets and how you're able to get it there. Yet again, I think it's something you have to learn once you're really doing it. But I know it's something I could talk about until I'm blue in the face. You really, every person's going to come to this with their own ideas, and it's really important that you honor that. And that's, I think, going back to Falcons, one thing that's great about what we do is because even internally, when we approach a project, everyone's going to have a voice in it. From the get-go, we're having our packaging team involved. They may not be packaging for another, 2 weeks to a month, but they need to understand how we're approaching it, so that if there's a different graphic or something they want to approach with, they already have that in mind. So really coming in with a kickoff and understanding that we're working as a team, not as an individual, and really that collaboration, and not only being able to present to a client, but being able to keep a common mindset internal is crucial.
Oh, wow.
So I think a lot of people who are coming into our industry have a lot of really good ideas. They're very creative. They think that they have a lot of good ideas to bring to the table. But I'd love for you to kind of speak to the actual process that is involved. Where to draw the line between what you think is a good idea versus what your client actually wants and what your client wants to convey. And I'm sure there is frequent tension there. And how much of the design process is coming from you telling the client what you guys think would be a good idea, and how much is them coming to you with a general idea, or I'm sure it's based on a project by project basis, but I'd love to kind of get your input on that.
No, I think you hit it around the head. No project is the same, and you can't approach any project as a uniform approach. Everyone's going to have unique needs, and I think you have to go into every process open. You may be hired to do one thing specifically, and it's good to keep in mind that's what you're there to do, but at the same point, you're there to help better the end result. And I think that's something that doesn't really come into mind always. It's you're working towards the end result rather than just what you're focused on, which I don't even know how to express how important that is. The global idea of everything you're doing is the end result. But yet again, this is something that drastically varies per project. Some clients can come to us saying, we want a theme park. And you're like, great, what do you want? And they're like, good question. This is where we want it. And we're like, okay, cool. Really broad. We have no idea what to do. Or we have to mine more information, do more research, and kind of really understand what the client's coming into with that and be able to expound upon that before we approach it. Or you can have a client come in and say, this is our IP, this is the experience and how we want to represent it. Here's our guidelines. We want you to create this for us. So it really just depends on what's coming to the table and who's coming to the table, because really you have to be open to collaborating with your client fully and making sure that their voice is heard throughout all of this. Because at the end of the day, they're paying the bills.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You don't want to deliver something that they don't like. That will not go well.
Totally. And it's one of those things also, if you're making the choice to deliver something that's not what they asked for, make sure you can preface and present that with the understanding of, we understand you asked for this. Here's the reasons why we're delivering this. And here's how we're helping towards the end goal of the project. Yeah.
Is that something that you have done in the past?
I don't say it per se, but I think it's something like with my involvement in theater, I can, for my personal projects, I can definitely talk to. There's been shows where I've had a director come to me and go, great, the stage is this, we need this prop, this prop, this prop, that's it. And I'm like, great, why? And they're like, oh, it's because that's what I want. And I'm like, okay, well, why is that what you want? Let's talk about that more and understand what about that is your vision and how we can create that. And sometimes we end up going in that direction, and sometimes you end up going in another direction. But really, again, it's about those conversations and collaborations to be able to not resist the process, but make sure you're going towards the best end result.
Yeah, and I feel like that's also a learned skill. I mean, you kind of touched on this, but just like understanding how to ask those questions and what questions work within like client and like design relationships. That's something I'm currently, going through because I'm freelancing now while I'm job searching. So I'm really trying to, learn that of what exactly do these folks want? How can I achieve this for them? That kind of thing.
Exactly.
I did have a question though, touching on collaboration within a studio like Falcon's creative group. You have these 3 branches of the studio as well as these amazing disciplines underneath as well. How do you, and if you can't answer this, that's okay. Yeah. But like, how do you put together, that like dream team for a specific project? Like how do you know who would fit well with what versus the other, if that makes sense?
Yeah. I think the best thing I can talk to is the fact that our culture is so strong that we know the people who are working here really well, and we know their interests, but also their skill set. If we're working on something very whimsical, I know that we have a few people who are very focused, and that's something they really enjoy or they're very good at. So a lot of it comes on to only who's available for the team, but also who is going to have the most fun, but also produce the best end goal. It really just varies on so many different balls that are in the air that you're juggling of, great, can we maneuver a team so that I can take you off a task and make sure you're directed at this? Or is it better to keep you there and have you come in at the end of a project or not touch it at all? It's really just a juggling act of availability as well as skill sets of designers and team members, and really understanding who is on your team and who can best benefit to collaborate. But I can say as a team here, we can attack every project, and we do, with the end goal in mind. And it's that idea of taking your ego and putting it aside and going, this is the end goal. And even if it's not something you want to do or something that you necessarily, it's your passion project, you put your full weight and heart behind what you're doing. And I think that ends up becoming to the core of collaborations at Falcons.
Earlier, you were talking about like incorporating IP, and like someone will come to you and be like, "This is our IP, and how do we do?"
Yeah.
What are just without getting too much into it, I feel like our whole conversation is like without getting too much into it.
Let's tiptoe.
How might one approach designing with an IP in mind? Like specifically, they come and bring you a widget, and you have to design around this widget.
Yeah.
How do you dive into that? Like, how is that even a thing?
So a lot of the IPs are typically very founded. Intellectual properties come with a set of, here's what we've done before, here's what we're doing now. And in order to maintain an IP, you really have to stick within those guidelines of representing that. So just kind of generally speaking, if an IP has something they're typically rendering stuff with squares or very like hard angles, you wouldn't start throwing in a bunch of rounded curves to everything that they have, because that wouldn't fit what they're producing. I know that's really general, but at the same point, it's you want to make sure that their vision coincides with what you are doing, and that when you're presenting their own ideas and their own characters, their own universes, that you're staying within those, because that's so much of immersion in what we do in the world building and character art. It's perpetuating that same thing that's been done before, expounding upon that, and creating a place where guests can live that and experience that firsthand. Yeah.
I guess that also really kind of leads into the notion of like digging into your research about something, because you're not going to throw a fresh doorknob on a door that's supposed to have been there for 380 years. Like,
absolutely. And that's so crucial, and that's a lot of what I do in my production design role, because I work in a lot of art direction sense as well, of first working with our team, especially because of my linguistics and cultural background, coming into working with a client, understanding, great, we're working in China. We don't want to have a Japanese roofline because that's very different from a Chinese roofline. It's just understanding those details and maintaining that throughout, and keeping that critical eye on authenticity and really what the client is looking for. We want to make sure that the end goal is as complete and uniform in its conception and execution. So really safeguarding that throughout the process becomes crucial, not only IP-wise, but also in just the whole process. Yeah.
Oh, Kelly, you're muted.
That just answered a lot of people's questions that they might not even know that they had. That was amazing.
Do your research.
Research.
It is so much easier to do research and come at a project with an idea than to fully do a piece of key art, or at least start on something and then come back and have to change it. Do your work up front. You'll be a lot happier.
You're almost never starting with a blank page.
And that probably helps a lot, just for a designer to have flexibility, which I think leads to a whole nother set of questions.
Yeah, totally.
Sorry, I thought you were going to discuss the authenticity. So yeah, the next kind of topic that we wanted to go over is kind of the importance of the process and showing your work. We're the kings and queens of segues here. So
yeah, totally.
So I know we've kind of talked a little bit about being flexible, especially at the beginning of your career here, but I'd like to kind of get into talking about not just professionally showing the importance, showing your work, but even personally for a lot of people who are starting their freelance or starting to get into the industry. I'd love to kind of get your take on that.
I think it's always important to understand where you come from, where an idea comes from. A piece of key art is always great, but to understand how you got that idea is just as important to the entire process. And that's always something when you're meeting someone or being able to talk about your work, that's just crucial. If you can set the stage for how you got there, but also how you work there, even if you were working with other people or yourself, how you collaborated to create that. That's really a great thing starting out to understand. But then in just doing your, in being flexible and kind of really the importance of the process, it really becomes that nature of, like we're talking about, do your research and follow steps. You may have a really strong idea, but it's also really important to gather reference imagery, look into cultural representation of where that could be in the world, what that is, and what the possible IP would have an effect on that. It's really just important to have all your ducks in a row and then proceed forward. Just following certain steps can be really important and save you a lot of time. I know I'm personally guilty of this. I'm getting married soon, and my partner is not a designer. So typically we'll have a discussion about like what we want our backdrop to be. And I'll look at an image and he goes, that's cool. Can we make something like that? And me going, designer brain just like exploding, going, great, I'm going to attack this. And I spend 4 hours doing a full concept art rendering of exactly what I want the background to be. And I'll come to him with the photo and he's like, why did you do this? Those colors are not in something we discussed. That shape's a little weird. What are all these paint textures? And it's just one of those things of continuing that discussion to help make sure that you're both on the same page and taking those baby steps through a design process to not just leap and bound, but to make sure that you have guardrails through a process. That's why a lot of projects have deliverables. You don't just go from a 30% to 100%. You typically would have multiple deliverables in between that to make sure that you can get to the 100% and know that you're delivering 100%. So that there's not a bunch of questions when you're delivering, but the fact that there's larger questions early on, more questions at the middle, and then you're really clarifying everything that you're doing in the end. It depends on each project, but keeping the steps in mind and showing your math in some sense is really important.
Yeah, I think the thing that I always kind of related to, we hear this all the time in our industry, like it's all about storytelling, right? Like, and I think it's so much more than just the story we're trying to tell guests at our attractions. It is, telling the story of how you came to that idea, telling the story of how, everything is a story. And the more of that story you can share with your client, with the guest, with, XYZ, like the more people will buy into it, the more people will enjoy it, the more, it's just that extra level of depth. I mean, even if people are coming to a project, like coming to and they have no idea, somehow having that story behind it is still going to add that level of depth to it, to a design.
Totally.
That is really cool. So
no, story matters, and it's in every part of our industry. But I think something I do personally when I'm approaching a project is I create like a 2 to 3 sentence log line that can like thesis statement what I'm doing, and I my desk mates can attest to this. It's posted in front of me when I'm working. Everything that I'm doing, if it does not go back to that log line and doesn't meet it, I know I'm not meeting the project. So it's having your own filters. It's incredibly important. I know as designers and managers and all sorts of people in the industry, what we do is really cool. And you can get really bogged down in, that's really cool, I want to do that. But keeping a larger focus and being able to step back from a project is incredibly important.
And I really like the point you made about having the design check-in steps. You have a DD, a 30%, a 60, 70, whatever. I think that we need to kind of apply that to a lot of other things as well. So like I talk to a lot of students and people who are coming up, and the piece of advice that I like to give for those is, especially on social media, LinkedIn, personal projects, when they only want to post the completed personal project and say, look at this one thing I built. But I tell everyone, post 30%, maybe you just have a rough sketch or something, or an original idea or something. If you can post steps of your process, people will, it's a story, people will follow you. And then when you do finally release that final product, they can see, I've been waiting to see what this is going to look like. This is so cool. I know exactly where you went through. It's definitely, and it's definitely a good way to raise awareness of the things you're working on and the lessons you're learning, which I think people really appreciate when they're looking to hire. So
yeah, exactly. And I know, coming from a theatrical background, we're always taught that the most important thing is the end product. People are always going to judge you and hire you by your work, and that's going to get your foot in the door. But what's going to keep you there is understanding how you work and work with a team. So yeah, great point. Show your work, but also it's a great way to get people engaged in your process and keep people along with you on the journey. Not only keeping you motivated, but just having fun with the whole thing.
And I know, Kyle, you just posted this in our little chat here as a joke, but he asked, what if the process is ugly? My opinion on that is say it, call it out. Say it's ugly. If you post something and you're like, oh well, I know this part isn't done yet. Everybody, I'm working on it. That honesty, nobody will judge. Nobody will judge. They'll know, oh, okay, so he's still working on that part. I know it looks a little rough right now, but that's because he's still working on it. So
exactly.
Don't be afraid to do that.
To touch on that too, Dave, I really like that point that you made, because the pivot as well is oftentimes like one of the most interesting parts of the process, and to see like how people changed from that, initial log line to the end product. For me personally, I think is like super interesting to see that journey. So I totally agree with you, Dave and Charlie.
Yeah, awesome. So I think that's it for this section. I know we have gotten a couple of questions from our audience, if we want to dive into those.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, we got a few questions coming in. Let's see. This first one, it comes from Anne Marie. She says, if you have one piece of advice for someone beginning to think about going into themed entertainment, what would it be? Great question.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Hi, Anne Marie. I think one of the strongest things, I know we've been discussing it, but understand how you fit into the world of theme entertainment. Not only wanting to be in theme entertainment, but understanding what you're bringing to a design team or an end product. That's crucial to just getting your foot in the door, but also it's a good leap. I'd say look at other people who are currently in the industry. Look at their resume, look at their website, look at their LinkedIn. See how they're presenting themselves and align yourself with that. If you're a concept artist, your portfolio and your resume is probably going to look differently than if you're a producer. It's tailoring yourself and being able to present yourself in that light that you want to be seen in. I think it's just understanding where you are in your journey. It's fine to not know where you want to end up, but understanding what your skill set is and how you can add to a team is absolutely great. And especially if you don't know where you want to fit in yet, look into internships and competition work, or even just go to meetings with like-minded people. Being able to have those conversations and being able to continue your ideation process can help you understand where you are within the world of theme entertainment and where you want to be.
Yeah, I totally agree with that too. And I would consider myself as someone who is definitely new to the industry. Like this past year was definitely eye-opening for me career-wise and where I could go. And something to add to your point, Charlie, is like don't be afraid to reach out as well. At least like in my personal experience, everyone that I've talked to, whether it was like one LinkedIn message or like even a comment to a full-on like informational chat or coffee chat, like has been so welcoming, so nice to me. And, you know, everyone, at least in this industry and in my personal experience, has just been so uplifting and helpful in that sort of way. So,
yeah. Absolutely. And reaching out to people like that kind of is twofold a good idea, because one, it's very difficult to know what goes on in our industry. It's kind of a, you know, behind closed doors. Like even in a chat like this, we can't really talk about a lot of the specifics that we want to talk about. So, you know, having that conversation and figuring out what they actually do on their day-to-day is really going to help you inform you of, you know, is that something that I want to do? Where do I fit in? And then the other thing that it really helps with is that you are building that connection, these connections that will help you get your foot in the door at some point, or, you know, some point down the line, you know, help you on a project or in a role. So, you know, just reaching out and networking it's so necessary, but also so helpful. And it's not scary. I mean, it does seem very intimidating. I remember my first TEA event. I went and walked in and knew nobody, and they were all, you know, heroes. But I have never gone up to a group of people I don't know in this industry and had a bad experience.
Exactly.
So
yeah,
don't be scared.
Yeah, feel free to reach out. That's really one of those things. If you have those conversations, even at a TA event, you can go, great, can we continue this conversation and have coffee sometime? Mm-hmm. Our industry thrives on caffeine. Likely you do too. This is a great way to meet people. So yeah, there we go. An advertisement right there.
Very nice.
So
sips iced coffee.
Yeah, don't be afraid. Have fun. The worst someone could say is, hey, I'm busy, I can't. Here's someone else I could refer you to.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep, totally agree. We got another question put up right here from Samuel. This is an open question for everyone, and I do have an answer to this, but Charlie absolutely will let you start it off. But do you think experience in academia hurts an applicant's chances in the industry? And I think this question more so means like going back to school for that master's degree or taking a longer time in education, different things like that.
Yes and no. I don't think there is a black and white answer to this. I think, especially having a master's degree, it's good to know what your skill set is and that you've really spent the time to finesse that. A master's degree doesn't always mean that you're the best at what you're doing. And that's not to shame any program or anything, but to understand what your effect is on the process is incredibly important. Making a very beautiful picture is great, but if that picture has to be built, you need to understand how that has to be built. And I think that's something that you don't always learn unless you're part of an actual working process. So being able to balance that education with practical experience would be the only thing I would say is really the only thing that could hurt about an academic experience. Is just where that separates. You've got to keep in mind how that affects the process. Yeah.
Yeah, and I totally agree too that it's not a black and white answer either. Because that was really my answer to this question, is that it really depends on the person, what kind of student you are to an extent, and as well as like your motivation to be in that academic setting. So like for me, going back to get my master's degree was absolutely life-changing because I put in the work to I knew going in, I was like, okay, themed entertainment is what I want to do in a year once I'm done graduating. How can I make this possible for me? Where do I fit in? Like you were saying, Charlie.
Yeah.
And then that year led me to meet Kelly. It led me to meet Dave. It led me to meet Patrick, all these amazing people. So I really think it just depends on your motivations and then how you utilize that time in that space. Kelly, I don't know if you also want to touch on it as well.
Yeah, well, having come from an academic background into themed entertainment, legitimately, I was a teacher. So I left teaching to come to themed entertainment. So I'm more than a little biased. Do I think that what Charlie and Emily have said, 100%. You can't just have the academic without the practical knowledge behind it. There are a lot of things that are like, oh, theoretical design, and it looks wonderful. You look at it and you're like, God, that's beautiful. That's magnificent. That's, this feat of human creativity. But then it's very impractical, and it's not something that is ever possible to be built because physics exists. So it's, being able to balance the practical knowledge with the academic knowledge and the creativity, like all three of those pieces, I think is really, Michael Blau said it yesterday on the TEA annual meeting, that, you have to have that balance. You have to have all three legs of the stool to be a balanced stool. So
it's true.
And kind of the spin-off on this, it's a personal question I've had, and I think all three of you might have a good opinion on it, having gone through master's programs. Now that we're seeing a lot more of these kind of general themed entertainment master's programs, I mean, Charlie, you've said it a couple times in this talk already, like, figuring out the specific what you're going to offer, what you want to do in the industry is important. I was wondering if there has been any challenges. I know you guys have been in this, in some, you've experienced these programs and people in these programs. Has there been any challenges getting that specific, entrance to companies? Have companies really been hard to figure out where to place you guys because, it isn't as specific as, scenic design or something like that?
I can start off, but I think for me, just because coming out of grad school, I focused so much on the finished product, and it wasn't until I started working more in themed entertainment that I was able to build off of more conceptual work as well as more themed entertainment work. It was creating that difference in mindset of, yes, I understand how fabrication works. I took part in it in the past, but I am a designer now, and understanding that separation. And it just goes back to how you're presenting yourself and how you want to represent what you're doing. So if you're looking at a master's program, consider where you want to end up and how that specific program can help get you there. Just having a degree isn't always going to get you in the door, but understanding what you're able to take from that program will.
Yeah, agreed. I can hop off of that as well because I had a similar experience in my master's. So I'm a graphic designer by trade, but my thesis itself was all about interactives, and I was building Arduinos and doing all of this stuff that I had no experience in, and learned that I am not, suited for that type of tangible experience. But within that, there was still so much transferable value in that of, learning more about user interaction and different things like that. So totally agree, Charlie. It's more so that perspective that you have of what you're getting out of that experience. And then to answer more specifically your question, Dave, it has helped me understand that I love graphic design and I am a graphic designer by trade. So.
Learning what you don't like is sometimes even more valuable than what you like.
So true.
I personally, I can't stand minimalism. And my advisor in grad school made me do a year of minimalism. And I had a full kind of mental break at first where I was like, I can't do this. It's just so boring. But it allows you to look at the details. And it kind of taught me to focus on things in a different way and to keep my mind open. So, yeah, you just have to keep open to the opportunities that are presented to you.
Yeah, so with my particular program, they pull people in from all across. We have engineers, architects, interior designers, graphic designers, design thinking, which is a degree, art historians, which I also am. We have all these people, and they kind of come together in this huge umbrella of themed entertainment design.
Mm-hmm.
So if I wanted to go and take a couple of architecture classes, I could have gone and done that and really kind of explored that within my program. And I know a lot of other programs are being set up in a very similar way. I think the key would be, if you are in school and you're wanting to get this themed entertainment design degree or master's or whatever,
mm-hmm.
make sure that whatever you're taking for your electives is actually feeding you down the line.
Yeah.
Like, don't just take the class because it sounds like everybody else is taking this class. If that's not what you're interested in, don't go that way, because you're wasting a class.
Yeah. No, and I think that's a great point. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was saying, but even take the classes you're interested in, and I think that kind of lends itself to a point that I know, Charlie, you and I were talking about earlier. Like, people are wondering what to do with their free time right now. You know, how do I spend my free time? What skills can I learn that I will be employable in this industry? Yeah. And it's kind of like that. Do the things that interest you. Take the classes that interest you. Yeah. Things that you will be passionate about, because one, you're going to be a lot better at it, or two, you're going to take that class and realize, oh, actually, I don't like this, and you're not going to waste any more time on it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. That's so important. Do what you love. And that's why we're all here. Yeah.
Well, we're in a lucky space too, and I think this has been said on the show multiple times, so sorry to be redundant, but this summer within the pandemic has sucked. Like, I'll be transparent about that. But within this industry, I feel like there's just been so many outlets for people to get involved and, have these passion projects like the STEP, the workshops that Organ did, right now the Imaginathon Challenge, and even just not like even those official volunteer projects, but so much more like free collaboration has been happening this summer, I feel like. And that to me has been extremely inspiring. So it's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Moving on, I had a question for you, Charlie. We have talked a lot about like the process and how to get your foot in the door and things like that, but I kind of want to hear a little more about, where you are now, what you're loving about your role with Falcons, and even like, again, not going into specifics or too much specifics, but like what do you do as a production designer? Like, what's that day-to-day kind of like?
Totally. So, just talking about my role and what I do at Falcons, I think one of the benefits is that I get to do a lot of different tasks. As a production designer, I'm not only taking a design from like blue sky and ideating story with our team, but I'm managing that throughout the whole studio with our team of artists. I will be modeling, storyboarding, sketching, doing elevations, redlining, and communicating with a client throughout the entire process. So I wear a lot of hats, and I think that's one of the exciting things about my role is that being within my team, I get to be hands-on in the design process, but also get to have an oversight towards what the entire process is. Which is something that you don't always get with a lot of studios. Is typically you have one role that you're able to do. But at Falcons, I'm able to do quite a bit more, which has been really exciting and really pushes you to grow so much. And I think one of the biggest things for me is that that's really helped me grow as a designer and my confidence, but also in just being able to work. I know a lot of people sometimes can approach a project with a bit of like second guessing of what they're doing. And it's good to keep that. And it's good to always go back and go, well, is this where I want to be? But at the same point, it's coming at that with the confidence and knowing, yes, this is the energy I want to take towards this project, and this is how I want to approach it. So Falcons has been a really amazing opportunity for me. And coming into my production design experience, it's really allowing me to balance a lot of hats that I really enjoy. Yeah. Super
cool. Yeah, I love hearing more about, these studios that might not be household names. Because again, I'm fairly new to the industry, and it's easy to get tunnel vision on those, bigger companies. But it's super cool about everything that you all do, especially with that package. You all have such an amazing, again, breadth of work. We got another question, though, from Facebook, from Connor. What technical or interpersonal skills have made you successful as a production designer?
Ooh, that's it. I don't know if there's a list of things that have made me successful. I think it's yet again being passionate about what you do, but beyond that, I think there are definitely programs or things that you, if a production design role, you typically would work with. I think for me, it's I work within different I'd say different parts of the project. So if it is pure ideation and I'm just working with a team and I'm writing out a storyline, that's one thing. If I'm modeling, it's making sure that I'm modeling it in a program that's not only current, but also something that can transfer well to different mediums of the process. Interpersonal skills, be a nice human. I think that always helps. Just work with your team. Being able to collaborate and understand that you're part of the process, but you're not the process. It could sound easy to say, but take your ego out of what you're doing and make sure that you're helping the entire process. Production design is kind of that middle ground of finishing out a project, but also taking a big idea and making sure it's buildable and making sure it's realistic. So being able to sit in there, you have to be able to balance being on the very creative blue sky page, but also have the very founded, we live in a real world and gravity is a thing kind of page.
Yeah. Excellent point. We are nearing towards the end of the show, though. It's been almost about an hour and a half. So thank you so much, Charlie, for giving this time and having this conversation with us.
Happy to, guys.
And learning more about Falcon's Creative Group. Again, you all have done such amazing work. Congrats on your Thea with Jane Goodall. So cool. So cool.
It's super exciting.
Yeah, it's awesome. Before we leave, though, we did just have a general question of just any parting words of wisdom you have for the folks watching this show, again, who want to break into the themed entertainment industry or don't even know where to start, anything like that.
We keep going back to different topics, and I think it's so important, but do your research. There is so much literature out there. If you just go on Amazon and research theme park design or theme park books, there's so many things that can help illustrate the process, as well as different things to understand. So even if you're just starting, read a book. Start to dive into where you want to be in the process and learn more about it. There are so many different disciplines within what we do, and it doesn't mean you have to just do one, but understand what drives you and what interests you. Curate your passion and make sure that you're really driving that forward and having that with everything that you're doing. It's a tough industry to get into, but once you're here, it's family in so many ways. So love what you do and make sure that's what drives you forward at the end of the day. Everything else will follow, but make sure that you're doing it for the right reasons and that you're more than 100% in this industry. Yeah.
Perfect.
All right. Thanks a lot, Charlie. I'd like to also shout out your Falcon's the Creative Podcast. You guys have a podcast, right? It's a great way to learn more about your guys' process and some of the cool things that you guys are working on. I found it to be. I subscribe. I listen all the time. And it's really cool to hear kind of the behind the scenes thinking. You guys are doing some really cool work, and there's definitely some inspirational people behind it. So
please definitely reach out, look into that, because I know one of the first series we've done is like how to get your foot in the industry, and I know it's good to get my perspective on it, but we have everyone from computer engineers to project managers who are on those podcasts. So it's a great way to understand different parts of the process, but also different opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So thanks everyone for watching. Feel free to reach out to any of us with any questions you might have had and I didn't have a chance to ask. I know we're all barely active on most social media platforms. So
Yeah.
Do not hesitate. And thanks again.
Thanks.
Awesome.
Thank you, Charlie.
Thanks, guys. Take it easy.